Africa has been at the receiving end of the worst side of the tobacco business. Majority of the tobacco companies are not African companies. They are foreign companies that are marketing very dangerous products on the African continent.
Getting the industry out. The industry should not sit at the table, and the polluters should pay. They should be made responsible for what they have been doing, for what they have left for our environment. So it's our future.
Africa, a continent rich in diversity, culture, and untold stories. But amidst the tales of passion, values, and the environment, there's one story that demands our attention. Tobacco pollution.
It's Visa. Visa with the time. Slow Visa. Africa. It's Visa. It's Visa. It's Visa. Visa with the time. Africa. It's Visa. It's Visa. Africa, gone is tomorrow. Today is here. Achievement to be accomplished. Nothing to fear.
Welcome to another inspiring episode on the BSA platform, here where passion, values, and the environment come to life. If you missed last week's episode, be sure to check it out. We delved into the incredible story of a young man named Isaac Nyamuhaki, who is converting waste into green energy products. Today our focus is on Africa's role in supporting the International Plastics Treaty combating tobacco pollution. This episode aims to shed light on the environmental consequences of tobacco production and use, particularly the plastic pollution caused by cigarette filters. It highlights the importance of Africa's support for the international treaty to address plastic pollution and hold the tobacco industry accountable for its damaging effects. Now, we will hear from two experts who will throw more light on the story. One is in the person of Mr. Leonce Sessou, the Executive Secretary of the African Tobacco Control Alliance, the ATCA. The other is Oluwafemi Matthew Akinbode, the Executive Director of Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPPA.
My name is Leonce Sessou. I am the Executive Secretary for the African Tobacco Control Alliance, ATCA, headquartered in Togo, Lomé. We are a Pan-African civil society network in the promotion of public health, specifically through tobacco control. As you know, tobacco, let's say that today, every year tobacco kills around 8 million people. And this claim from tobacco is being going higher if nothing is done. Currently, we here at the UNESCO office, UNESCO headquarters in Paris, to raise this and share this with colleagues from the environment sector. We know that people are smoking, and as I told you, 8 million people, 8 million deaths every year, but it's more than 5 trillion cigarettes smoked every year, which is 4.5 trillion of butts, cigarette butts, thrown into the environment. You see here, as in many cities, you can see cigarette butts everywhere. But let me tell you that this cigarette butt it has components. It's composed of plastic fiber, and this is part of the single use of plastics. And we're discussing today the issue around ending plastic pollution. We think that this is also plastic pollution, and delegates here should address this. It's key to get this embedded in the treaty negotiation, and we need to recall that there is also a convention, a worldwide known treaty, that is the WFCTC, the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And the WHO Framework on Tobacco Control is guiding us on various principles that can be really helpful in the negotiation of this treaty. One, for example, is on the interest that parties should protect the health, and I would say here that parties should protect the environment, because there is a true linkage between our environment and our health, our well-being. So for this linkage between our environment and our well-being, I will say that it's key that parties in this negotiation also consider the linkage that they can have between the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and this negotiation they are having. So this treaty that is being negotiated can learn a lot from the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And one lesson, for example, is getting the industry out. The industry should not sit at the table, and the polluters should pay. They should be made responsible for what they have been doing, for what they have left for our environment. So it's our future. And since we have this concern about our environment, we all see that we are here discussing our future today. And the kind of discussion we'll have here, the seriousness we put in, and all the great decisions that will be decided here will help us for the future. So the future is not just for us, but it's also for our kids, it's also for our youth. So we need to save the environment, we need to save the well-being of our population. And for Africa, we think that even though Africa is now, in terms of consumption of tobacco, is still low in Africa, but let me tell you that Africa is being targeted by the tobacco industry because we are a youthful population. We have a great youth number in terms of population that is being targeted by the tobacco industry, just as to say that they feel like Africa is another business, is a market for them, and then they can go because the future of the business is in Africa, which is not right, which should not be right. So having all this plan from the WHO FCTC and linking with the negotiation for this treaty will help also save the lives of our youth in Africa. This is what I want to share with you as a message.
So Africa has been at the receiving end of the worst side of the tobacco business. Majority of the tobacco companies are not African companies. They are foreign companies that are marketing very dangerous products on the African continent. We're talking about the big tobacco manufacturing companies, and these companies have seen Africa as a very fertile ground to grow their market. Why? Because there is a lot of regulation and laws in the developed countries, in Europe, in America. In fact, smoking is coming down in America, and they think that Africa is where they can recruit new people. And so what you see is growing smoking rate on our continent. And when you have growing smoking rate, then you also have those diseases that are associated with smoking, cancer, high blood pressure, and increased NCDs generally on our continent. When you look at the health facilities, we don't really even know what it takes to manage those diseases. But tobacco does not only damage public health by only smoking. In fact, every facet of the tobacco industry damages the environment and ultimately come back to impact on public health. And how do I mean? Either by growing tobacco farming. The theme of this year's World No Tobacco Day is let's grow food and not tobacco. And that is actually instructive, particularly where we have some of the countries that depends on Africa, on tobacco growing. The case of Malawi comes readily to mind, and Malawi then happens to be the poorest country in the world, because their main source of income is tobacco leaves. And the team tried to now help us to put pressure on governments, particularly on our continent, to shift focus from tobacco to food, which is in short supply. But when you then even grow tobacco, you cut trees, there is deforestation. You cut trees to cure tobacco. After curing the tobacco, then tobacco is processed into what we call cigarettes. And cigarette, it's microplastics in what they call the filters. The filters are, when you look around, they litter the ground, first creating environmental nuisance. And then these filters are non-biodegradable. They last longer and they contribute to climate change. And we're saying it is time for African countries, now that we are in this negotiation, to stand strongly to support a treaty that will ban filters that will ban microplastics, that will ban single use of plastics on our continent, and so that we can also rise up and save the planet and save the environment. Let me tell you this, when we talk about climate change, right, Africa is going to be at the receiving end in case of rising temperatures in the world. It's going to cause a lot of floods. We're going to see drought. We're going to see unpredictable weather pattern. Agriculture will suffer. African people will suffer. We're seeing hurricane in parts of Africa and what that's caused. We are seeing droughts where there's no rain in Kenya. All these impact heavily on the African people. So cumulatively, we should join hands to be able to ensure that every treaty that concerns the environment is strong and able to protect our future. On the youths of our continent, the tobacco companies are very, very manipulative. They create programs, they create products to target our youths. They create even adventures to target our youths. And for me, it is the responsibility of all of us and the African government to look at how to strengthen where we have tobacco control laws on the continent and how to enforce those laws, particularly, including regulations, provisions that will ensure that youths are not targeted, to protect kids from seeing tobacco adverts, tobacco imagery, to stop smoking on movies and musics that they wave on our continent now, and essentially ensure that our kids on this continent grow healthy and grow in a smoke-free Africa.
So your name and your organization?
My name is Oluwafemi Matthew Akinbode. I'm Executive Director of Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPPA, as well as the President of Africa Tobacco Control Alliance.
I hope you are inspired, because we are. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to all our social media channels. It's displayed on the screen, and don't forget to press that notification bell to receive updates when they come by.
It's peace out.